Now let us study the major diseases of banana. The first one is Panama wilt. The causal organism is a soil-borne fungus, Fusarium oxysporum. Pathogen enters the plant through the wounds on the roots. These Yalaki banana plants are affected with Panama wilt. Leaves droop down with yellowing. The plants wilt slowly and die. Cross-section of the stem shows this kind of black-brown rings. The pathogen develops in the stem and hinders the movement of water and nutrients. As a result, the plant wilts. High concentration of pathogen results in the splitting of the stem like this. The fingers of the bunch will not mature in the infected plant. Disease spreads to the suckers also. This is a major worldwide disease of banana. Pathogen lives in the soil for a long time. Other related species of banana and grass roots are the alternate hosts of the fungus. Flooding will spread the disease to the entire garden. The infected rhizome will carry the disease to new plantations. Panama wilt is a reason for the disappearance of Nanjanagudu resabale, a historical variety of Karnataka.
Disaster stories, but it was first described actually in Australia back in the late 19th century, and but it's the other name you get for it is Panama wilt, and that's taken after the fact that it then appeared in Central America, in Panama obviously, and in areas round about there, and started encroaching on the banana plantations at that time, which that was when banana plantations and banana took off as a fruit of trade, because it coincided with the steam boats, etc., that were able to take the bananas quickly to North America and sell them to the markets there. So, and then you get some rather grubby stories happening, because the people that owned the boats also started to invest in the land, and as Fusarium wilt took over, the land became contaminated because the fungus that causes it's a soil-borne pathogen. As the land became contaminated, these rather companies that were becoming bigger and bigger started a bit of a land grab. They would buy new land and displace the subsistence farmers, etc. And so a lot of the stories you talk about, banana republics, all that, and some nasty politics that went on with it, and coups and various things like that, all stems back to this fungal pathogen, Fusarium wilt. So it's got a lot to answer for, and if anyone's interested in reading more about it, there's actually a very good book that came out that's called Banana, the Fate of the Fruit That Changed the World, because it has had a big impact, and the Fusarium has had a big impact on banana and politics. But anyway, let's move on. So At that time, fusarium wilt was causing a problem in the start of the 20th century on all these new banana plantations, and particularly in Central America, but it really travelled, it'd been spread around the world, because if they knew then what we know now, they hopefully wouldn't have been moving the bits of banana plants or corms and suckers contaminated with the fusarium around the place. Now, your grandparents may know, some of you, I don't know if there's anyone in the audience present, but would have, the cultivar that you would have bought in the supermarket, well, it wouldn't have been the supermarket, in the veggie shop, fruit and veggie shop in the early 20th century would have been Gros Michel. And people claim that it was actually a sweeter banana, more pleasant banana. You rarely see Gros Michel. In fact, I had to just grab a picture off the internet for that. And that was because it was susceptible to this first wave of fusarium wilt caused by Fusarium oxysporum. And because banana is it's just a plant pathologist's dream. It's a monoculture, it's a single genotype, it's perennial crop, it's everything. And here you've got a soil-borne pathogen that gets into the soil and doesn't shift. It's there forever. And so you couldn't dream of a better scenario for a plant pathogen. And so Gros Michel became defunct. You could no longer grow it because so much of the land was contaminated. And so it was replaced. So we went through a period, and you may know the song, I'm not going to attempt to sing it, We Have No Bananas Today. I like to think that relates to that time, and it certainly coincides with that time, where bananas became quite rare to buy, to purchase, because certainly in the cultivated bananas, because of this problem with fusarium wilt. So then along came Cavendish. Now, Cavendish wasn't a wonderfully bred cultivar that had been bred for resistance to fusarium wilt. It was just coincidental. It was just a natural accession that had been taken and developed just somatically. There was no breeding involved. It originated, some stories say it came from Vietnam, other stories say elsewhere, but it'd been collected back in the 19th century by a chap called Williams, who was one of these early botanists that went out during the 19th century, was funded by Lord Cavendish from England, and that's consequently he named the cultivar after his benefactor. And it was grown up, I think, in some glasshouse, maybe in the Cavendish estate or whatever, but it was also used in subsistence agriculture in Asia at that time. And it was discovered it was resistant to fusarium wilt. And so as a consequence, 90% of the bananas that are grown, even more than 90% of the cultivated banana of trade now is Cavendish. In Australia we have ladyfinger, and ladyfinger is still susceptible to that first wave of fusarium wilt, but Cavendish isn't. So let's just look at banana cultivation worldwide, and 90%, I don't know the accuracy of the figures, but roughly 90% of banana production worldwide is for subsistence farming. It's not for trade. And in countries like India and Uganda, it's a very important crop. Now, roughly, I think it's 45% is cooking banana, but that's cooking banana and plantains are sort of categorized together, and the other 55% is dessert bananas, the sweet bananas that we're more used to. So only 10% of banana production is actually, or sometimes some figures say 15%, is for export or for commercial production. So it's grown in these vast, huge plantations, particularly like some that you'd see in the Philippines or in Central America and Ecuador and places like that. There are many disease problems because it's, as I said, it's such a beautiful crop for a plant pathologist. And a lot of aerial spraying goes on, not for fusarium, but for other diseases such as the ones that cause black sigatoga. Mm-hmm. And if you live in some of these countries, you're constantly seeing the planes go over, dispersing the fungicides, etc. And they have wonderful problems with fungicide resistance as a consequence. So some of the disease issues, I'm just mentioning some of them, bunchy top virus, banana streak virus, Andrew talked about those a couple of weeks ago. black sigatoga and yellow sigatoga. Black sigatoga is caused by a species, a fungal species known as Microsphaerella fijiensis. Its close relative, Microsphaerella musica, put these internal quarantine measures in, and they are reasonably adhered to. So we can't control with fungicides. We're trying to control it culturally. The obvious thing is to get a new resistant cultivar to this tropical race 4. But that's a bit of a problem. Cultivated banana is a sterile polyploid with a parthenocarpic fruit. It's a total freak of nature. It shouldn't be there. It's only there because of us, because we cultivate it clonally. We take bits and suckers and we transfer them. Now we can use tissue culture, so it's a little bit cleaner. But basically, the cultivated banana wouldn't survive without our intervention, and it's only been presumably selected from the wild because it doesn't have any seed in it. Now, I haven't got a picture of any, I didn't get a close-up picture of seed, but there's some here, the dried up ones that were in my office if you want to have a look at them later. But if you were going to crunch into a banana with seed in it, it wouldn't be very pleasant. It'd be a bit like pomegranates, I guess. But so that's not only a problem when you're trying to breed it, but also when you're trying to breed one, your end product, you want it to be sterile. So you don't want to, you want to get rid of the seed productions phase of it. The bananas we eat are mostly from Musa acuminata, the A genome, but also sometimes the B genome, Balbisiana. And it's actually thought the Balbisiana has a lot more resistance in it, and it would be nice to introduce a little bit more of it, but then you have added problems when you start doing crosses. So ladyfinger has a bit of the B genome in it. Cavendish is apparently mostly just the A genome. And so obviously they're polyploids, which makes them a little bit bigger anyway, but they're sterile, they've got uneven chromosomes in them. And compared with the wild diploids that produce fruit, I think that's the next picture, yeah. The wild diploid tends to be produce smaller fruit, but lots of seed, which can be a bit of a problem, and isn't necessarily parthenocarpic. So parthenocarpy is when you're getting fruit without the seed again, which is of no advantage to the plant. So it's extremely difficult to breed for resistance and to get this end product of parthenocarpy and sterility. And on top of that, you've got long generation time, a rather large plant, and you may have problems with interploidy crosses. And in addition to that, the people that have done the banana genome discovered that there's quite a large proportion of the genome is made up of transposons, just to make life a little bit more confusing as well. So there have been some breeding efforts with using improved diploids crossed onto triploids and then scouring through lots and lots and lots of banana fruit to get the occasional seed that may recover, and then take that through a screening program. Much of that type of breeding was done in Honduras, and where I guess labour costs are a little bit less than they would be here in Australia. But even still, they haven't... Only recently now we're seeing cultivars coming out of these breeding programs. Goldfinger was one such cultivar, and it did have some level of resistance to Fusarium wilt, to race 4, but it's not been commercially acceptable for reasons. They say the consumer doesn't want it, but maybe sometimes it's maybe the wholesalers don't want it because it has different ripening requirements, and so it makes it a little bit more complicated than just having to deal with Cavendish. So as yet, we have no commercial cultivar with complete resistance to race 4. So along comes Musa acuminata, subspecies malacensis. Now, it's been long known that it does seem to have some resistance to Fusarium, and you can see they're a much skinnier plant than your average one because they're diploids. Sure, it's nothing to do with us not tending our plants very well, but they're much skinnier plants, but they do seem to, now initially, we got seed from this line was a scientist, Ivan Budenhagen, he's emeritus at the University of California, Davis, was on a field trip with Susie Bentley and Natalie Moore, who used to be here within the CRC for tropical plant pathology. And Ivan discovered this wonderful, healthy wild banana growing in a devastated plantation of tropical race 4 in Indonesia. And so being an old school scientist, he grabbed the seeds and brought them back to Australia, which they was allowed to do at that point. And the seeds were embryo rescued by Sharon Hamill at the DPI in Nambour, and her and Mike Smith ended up putting it out into a plantation in southeast Queensland where subtropical race 4 was an issue. And they noticed, and that's when we got involved, that there seemed to be this lovely 3-to-1 segregation within this population. Even though it was a bit of a mixed parental population, you were seeing this segregation going on. So plants that were dying next to wonderful, vigorous, healthy plants. Now you can't take too much from that, because fusariums are a real pain in the neck to do in field trials. You need to do lots of replications of individuals because you can get misses. You do that with any soil-borne pathogen. It can